Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of the Fork Fix podcast. I am Cheri, and this episode is titled Healthcare, Hospice, Death, and Whole Food Plant-Based Eating. This podcast is going to tell a little bit about where I've been, why I've been absent, where I've been the last pretty much 4 months. Radio silence, I guess, for those of you out there who listen. I know I don't have a huge base of listeners, but I know there are a few. And some of you, I'm sure, wonder what happened. So this is going to kind of explain that in detail. I have a lot that I want to share. Hopefully what I'm sharing, some of it I might get emotional. So bear with me through that. I'm hoping it'll help any of you out there that may be in this kind of situation or be faced with it in the future. And I know that a lot of us will be or are. So let me just jump right in. So about around the beginning of April, I was on my plant-based journey, doing my thing, doing my daily walks, doing my weekly podcast. I was blogging once a week, just hanging out with my family as I was. I had been talking to my mother almost every few days. She had been declining some, which I was very aware of. I will just kind of I want to tell the whole scenario because I think this will be helpful for others. She had fallen last fall, and I hadn't seen her for quite some time, but she had fallen. I still talked to her quite frequently. She had stopped driving since last fall. She was in a place, she lived in Auburn, Indiana. So she was in a place where she could have groceries and things delivered, unlike us here living out in the middle of nowhere. So if you're watching on video, you can see my beautiful trees back there. Hopefully you can see those. But anyways, we don't have that luxury, but she did, which was a blessing because I wasn't there. I did have my brother who lived close to her, but their relationship was a wee bit rocky. And so she wasn't all alone. She had neighbors around her that kind of, looked after her and things, which I'll go into here in a moment. But anyway, I knew that things were kind of not great. She had a close friend that was kind of sending me messages and saying, "Hey, Cheri, you got to do something." And I knew that I did, but I wasn't even sure where to start. My mother, I will just say, for the last 10 years or so, since my father died, we've gotten along really pretty well. Had a pretty solid relationship. We were friends, close friends, along with her being my mother. But I will say that she was a tough cookie. She was a tough mom at times, extremely stubborn as a person. She did her own thing, and she wasn't someone who was just going to listen to anybody, even including me. So I would say to her that she maybe needed to go to the doctor, and she would not have any part of that. So long story short, she had an incident happen in her house where she had a flooded basement. She had to have contractors come in. I just assumed, since people were coming in and out of the house, that maybe things weren't as bad as what I thought they could be. And I will kind of explain that here in a minute. But anyways, people in and out. But during that whole scenario, it really fatigued her. She had fallen a few times, lots of times, I found out after the fact. The people that were in her house were helping her get up, things like that. Right before I went down the beginning of April to see her, she gave away her dog, so then I knew things were really serious. She's, she told me on the phone she had fallen with him. She couldn't, take care of him really anymore. And so now let me explain just a bit with my mom. She was a hoarder. And I know I probably should have put that in the title because that would have went with my H's, like healthcare, hospice, hoarding. My mom was a hoarder. She wasn't always a hoarder. When I was young, really young, I don't think she did. It was more when she had money, she would buy things and keep lots and lots and lots of things. And I know in our society, there's lots of people out there who have this problem. And some of it, it's probably kind of like other issues, like even I would say, and I don't mean to sound offensive, but even like autism, I think it's probably a spectrum disorder kind of thing where, meaning that somebody can have, a little bit of hoarding tendencies to extreme hoarding, right? Like you see on the TV show. Well, I knew this, and I had kind of battled with it as a child because I grew up in kind of the mess as I got older and had to deal with that. And it was tough. So I knew that once I was in her house that it would probably be bad, but I had no idea. So, okay. So fast forward to where we're to April. I guess that wouldn't be fast forward, but fast forward to April. I had her neighbor, because she was close with a couple of the neighbors. They called me. I think it was a Tuesday morning, because the Sunday before, my husband and we decided my mom wouldn't answer the phone, and I was concerned that maybe she fell again and then she couldn't get help. So we decided to drive down to Auburn. We were part of the way there, about an hour and a half in or so, and I got a call from her. And I'm gonna be blunt with my language. So if I offend you, I apologize. But when I called her, she's like, "Turn your ass around, Cheri. I don't need you coming down here. I don't want you doing that. I just turn around. I don't need your help. We'll be okay. I'll let you know when I need your help," is what she told me. So anyways, the neighbor called me, I think it was Tuesday morning, and said, your mom fell through in the night, and they had to get her up, and she was able to get to the phone, and they could get her up, but something is really wrong. So she needs help. So I didn't call her this time. I just, I talked to my husband. I said, we're going to have to go down. I don't know how it's going to go, because in my mind, I had kind of dealt with her parents, and that could be a whole nother podcast in itself. But we tried to get them help for a long time. They refused help. We tried to call social services. They wouldn't help us. And I kind of thought that I would be in the same boat with my mom, even though she went through that with her parents. She was stubborn just like them, so I thought she was going to refuse me getting her help. So we got there, and I'll just paint a picture for you. And I'm gonna start to get a little emotional. But I walked in the house, and it was really bad. It was really bad, and I knew it would be, but it was like so bad to the point where like my husband and I were inhaling. They were fruit flies, is what they were. We found out after the fact, but. Like, we're walking into this house and you're just like, it's bad. And I tried not to act like it was bad in front of my mom, because I knew she was embarrassed by it. So that was keeping, me from being able to be there. That thing was keeping her from asking for help, because I think she probably felt shame in how her house looked. But mind you, for the weeks prior to this, there had been all kinds of people in and out of her home, and not one person called anybody, and no person should have been living in the house that she was living in. And I understand. I don't fault any of those people, because I know getting involved in someone else's business is not something most of us want to do, right? I didn't even want to deal with my own business, let alone have someone, an outsider. But anyways, I'm just shocked that no one called. So she was sitting in the chair, and she was very weak, and I knew just looking at her, honestly, I knew she was dying. I could just tell. I didn't know what was wrong with her. I knew that she hadn't been taking her thyroid medication. She hadn't been for about 6 months or so. When I saw her, I hadn't seen her for quite a while. She had lost like tons of weight. She was probably, I would say, around 180 at some point. Probably the last time I saw her, she was around 180, and I think she was like 140 something when she got into the hospital, maybe a little less than that. But anyway, so it was very obvious that, that she had lost the weight. And then after seeing the house, she was not caring for herself. She was not really eating. She couldn't really cook because the kitchen was so bad. The sink was broken, so there were no dishes that could be washed. It was just really sad. It was really sad that she was in that house, and yeah, and the thing is, listening to this, I know that if I was someone listening to the story, you'd be like, well, Cheri, why in the hell didn't she go down there and do something sooner? But she was my mom, and I had to listen to her wishes. Something I didn't do as a young person. As a child, I was a pretty mouthy girl, and I would talk back, and I would be disrespectful, and I didn't always listen to what my parents told me to do. Most of the time I didn't. I did my own thing. I will talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. But anyways, as a grown adult, a Christian woman, I felt I needed to respect what my mother wanted me to do. So right then I knew I had to make the decision. I said to my husband, there's no way we're getting her up. I'm going to have to call the ambulance. And I got very emotional with my mom, because I knew that was the last thing she wanted to do. She was kind of afraid of medicine. She's, you know, as a 77-year-old woman, honestly, aside from having hypothyroidism, she really had not battled any real chronic disease. Come to find out later, she had some things going on. She was probably definitely diabetic and not treated for that. So she probably had that going on, but the hypothyroidism might have had something to do with her sugars being all over the place. But anyway, for most people, you know, to get to 77, you're taking lots of medications, as we know, most Americans are, and you're dealing with some kind of chronic disease, whether it be, you know, heart disease or diabetes or something else. You're taking meds, arthritis, which she did have. But she didn't go to the doctor. She didn't take any pain medication. She wasn't a pill popper by any means. She was more of, she would try a lot of natural remedies, a lot of infomercial things, you know, things like that. But anyway, so I had to call the ambulance. But what I want to share with you is what I told her. And that's what set the stage for the months that followed. Is I looked at my mom and I told her, I said, I know that you don't want to get help, but I will make sure you are taken care of. And I will walk you through this journey and do whatever I can do to make sure you're okay. And I promised her that. And I feel like I succeeded to the best of my ability. So I will kind of like quickly go through the next few weeks and how they went down. She ended up in the ER, local ER, smaller hospital. Her actual physician came in and kind of berated her. I will tell you, I honestly understood why she didn't want to go see him, because I'm not going to lie, he was a total asshole to her. He's like, Phyllis, why haven't you come in? You know you were supposed to be talk to her like she was 2 years old. She was pissed. I could tell the way he was talking to her, and I completely got it. I think because of her defiance, he didn't do his due diligence to maybe care for her. Plus, she was 77. And in my previous experience, and then with the experience I had with my mom, once you get to a certain age, the care that you get in our health system is, or even in any rehab facility or anything else, is not good. Because I hate to say you're written off, but you kind of are. And and that is exactly what we faced. So long story short, she was there for just a few short days. In my mind, I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going to happen next. I have my family at home. We were still homeschooling, so we hadn't finished out the year. We were very close. The kids had just finished math. We were very close to finishing out the year. So I knew I could just, you know, put on hold just what we were doing and just, you know, give her the attention I needed. Since I don't have an outside job, I knew I could do that. But I knew I'd be faced to do that alone because my husband had to go back to work. So, and I knew we had to get the house cleaned up, because even though in the back of my mind I knew she was dying, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how long she had. I didn't know. My gut told me not a long time. But I knew the house had to be cleaned up. So she was in the hospital for a few days. They said she needed to go to rehab. At that time, she could stand with a walker, not very well. She had use of her arms. She could sign her name. She could pick up a fork and feed herself, not very well, but she still could. She had the strength to do that. So I just would, you know, we decided rehab. I let her pick the facility because she seemed pretty coherent to be able to do that. We picked a local nursing home that we were both familiar with. I wasn't super excited about her choice, but it's the one she wanted. It was close to where her house was. So I said, let's do it. If that's what you want, let's do it. I will help in any way I can. And so first things first, they get her, you know, into that facility. I knew we had to get the house clean. We had to get people. We had to get like I think it was a 40-yard dumpster. Like her whole driveway was a dumpster. And it took my husband and I, once we got her to the nursing home, we came back, we got my two oldest sons, we headed back to her place. So an overnight, headed back down to where she was. She's at the nursing home, so I'm kind of thinking, like, even though I hate nursing homes, I know the kind of care. It's supposed to be rehab, so I knew, you know, they're gonna be working with her and physical therapy and occupational therapy, all the things. So I wasn't there a lot that first week because I was at her house cleaning up all the shit. And let me tell you, it was so, you know what I probably should do is share pictures. I don't know. I probably shouldn't do that, because family is not, honestly, I will tell you, for family that's listening to this, I know this might be hard for you to hear, but I think it'll be helpful for other people. I'm sorry. That's all I'm going to say. It's the truth, and I'm given the truth. But anyways, her kitchen, it was just, it was bad. My husband had to really be the one to focus on that. The boys were really good about helping me. I will tell you, we threw stuff away that probably shouldn't have been thrown away, but we had to get the house cleared out. So we just went room by room, standing in her house. And this is my first little thing for all of you out there that are struggling with your health. Maybe you're listening to this and you've seen what I've been able to accomplish eating whole food plant-based, and you're like, I just don't know if I can do it. And you're overwhelmed. I understand completely. And I will tell you, there were parallels with this whole thing. I stood in that house. I'm going to cry again. And I thought, how am I going to deal with all of this? And it's no different than if you're faced with having like a battle with your health and you have an illness, or you have massive amounts of weight that you have to lose. And if you focus on the bad, if you focus on that weight, if you focus on the illness, you will not get better. You will not. You have to focus on the getting better. Something I did from the beginning of my journey is I didn't think about, Cheri, you have to lose 100 pounds. If I would have thought you have to lose 100 pounds, I would have just been frozen and paralyzed and thought there's no way in hell that can even happen. What I did is I thought about what I could do that day, take it day by day. What can I do right now? What can I feed myself? It was no different than when I was standing in that house, because there was so much shit everywhere. I was so overwhelmed by all of it. And I thought, there's no way in hell we're going to be able to clean this up. There's no way in hell. And I would just start bursting into tears. And my husband and the boys would walk me off the cliff, and they'd say, we just need to focus on getting it cleaned up, room by room, pile by pile. And we did. And I'm going to share a little bit more here about, and I mentioned my childhood kind of in the beginning. And I'm not going to go into detail because it can be hurtful for some, but I had a lot of trauma as a kid. There were a lot of bad things that happened. So in this whole journey, I loved my mother. I still do. But it was hard because I went to therapy as an adult to deal with a lot of this stuff. I thought I was through a lot of it. I knew some of my trauma from being younger, and it was, trauma 7, 8, 9, 10, 16, lots of it. It was like my whole childhood, really, that I can remember. There were lots of things. There was a short window of some really bad, and then lots of other stuff, just lots of baggage. And I know everybody's family, everybody has skeletons. As I'm saying this out to the podcasting world, I know we all do. I think there were lots of kids that grow up in really good families that don't even realize how good they have it because they don't have anything to compare it to. But I think there are lots of us that grow up in broken homes, and mine was one of them. It was not great for me, at least. That was my experience. Can't speak for my brother, but this is me. So something I didn't think I would have to deal with was that trauma. As I was cleaning up my mother's crap, all of those feelings came back to me again. And in my own families, I know that those feelings and that hurt surfaces sometimes in how I respond to my children. And I know it because I'm very self-aware, or how I deal with my husband, or all of those things. But I've had over the last probably, I don't know, 20 some years, maybe 18 years, I've had a really good handle on it. I've really worked through it really well, or at least I thought so, until I had to deal with this and see the absence from being around it. I'm gonna have to wipe my nose. I apologize. But not being around that and not being in it, I didn't realize how that those feelings would surface. So here I am in the middle of the mess. So like I said, that's kind of no different than if you're faced with a huge weight loss, or even a small weight loss, guys. Let's be honest. 20 pounds is hard. 30 pounds is hard. Sometimes even 10 is. But if you want to get better, just like me standing in that house being a mess, you can't focus on the big. You have to focus on the small and taking those little steps. So we got the house cleaned out. Oh gosh, I'm almost 20 minutes in. I'm going to try to make this not so long. But we got the house all cleaned out, or cleaned out enough that it was livable, or that we could even stay there, because we didn't have the money to be staying in a hotel night after night after night. And once we got it cleaned up, we had to be in it, you know? So we had to stay there, and it was kind of gross. Like, you know, it took us a while to eat there because of the bugs. We had to get the bug situation under control. So I lived off of like hummus sandwiches, like hummus and lettuce and bread from Aldi. And I will tell you, it was our best friend. Now I can't hardly eat hummus because that's all I ate those first few weeks. But it would have been so easy, guys. It would have been so easy to just go get fast food. I didn't do it. Even in that hard, I didn't do it. And now I wouldn't fault anybody for it, but I was shocked as shit that I didn't turn to it, but I didn't. So, okay, so there's that. So we get the house cleaned up. She's at the nursing home. I'm finally able to get to where I'm there more, and then I realize it's not good. Like, really not good. She wasn't eating at all. She got to where she couldn't, there was issue with her lifting her arms. Like, one day she was okay with that, and the next day it was pretty obvious. So I'm thinking she had a stroke. Their therapist thought maybe that was the case. We said something to the head nurse. The head nurse is like, nope, she was like that from the time she came in here, which was bullshit. It wasn't the case. I got to see how absolutely awful it was. Like, they were letting her sit in her shit. I didn't realize at the time my mother was fully incontinent. They didn't know it either. Nobody cared to pay attention to it. They had a catheter in from the hospital because she had a UTI. Or did they? No, they didn't. They had no catheter. She had a UTI, no catheter, came to the nursing home for rehab. She was pooping herself. I know this is a lot of information. But I found out later she had no control. And then there was issues with feeding. I knew she would eat peanut butter. So I went, they wouldn't feed her. So I went to like Gordon Foods, got a big old, like, for those watching on the video, it was like, guys, it was like bigger than my head, size of peanut butter, from Gordon Foods. And I set it in a room, and I let them know if they forget to give it to her on the tray, make sure she's getting it, because I know she'll eat it, because she wouldn't eat anything. And they wouldn't do any kind of smoothies. They wouldn't do anything because she needed high calorie. She needed calories, and she couldn't cut up her food. And they would give her like a big old, like, nasty piece of meat that she couldn't even hardly cut up or chew. The other thing was my mother had dentures, and because she had lost so much weight, she couldn't put, they were uppers, she couldn't put them in. So she couldn't really chew food. So, see, I'm cleaning her house. All this is going on. They don't really give a shit. And she's like just sitting there. She went days and days and days without any nutrition. And they were still doing 2 rounds of physical therapy and 1 round of occupational therapy every single stinking day. So think about going for someone who has 0 calories, no energy, and going for a big old long 1 mile walk. It exacerbated any condition my mother had. It exacerbated it. So, there were lots of things. Let's just say I'm pretty good about, I don't really get too upset with people. I try to be really respectful of people. But it got to the point where I had to put the people in the room, the administrator, the nurses, and everybody. They had taken that big old thing of peanut butter one of the days. I walked in. I hadn't seen her since the day before. It was the time that I had went home, came back. On her tray, they had, no shit, taken that huge thing of peanut butter, put a plastic spoon in it, and sat it right down in front of her. And that, because they got sick of like having to get stuff for her, I guess. I don't know. It was just like the last straw. We were already in the process. I had made the decision once the house was clean, we would just bring her home for home health care. And I would be there for I didn't know how long or anything. I had no idea. So, I was trying to get that worked out. I was really concerned about her condition, her bloating. She'd gotten really bloated. And then I told them they need to talk to the physical therapist. She thought the same thing I did, that maybe she had a stroke. Well, anyways, all of a sudden they were concerned, and they, by ambulance, took her to the emergency room where she had been before. And she hadn't peed like the whole time she was there. Apparently, and nobody really knew it, her bladder was completely full, backed up into her kidneys. It was just a mess. So really, really bad situation. Let's just say right now, if you have any relatives that need to go to a nursing home facility, be very careful. because a lot of them are short-staffed. And now, after having to care for my mother, I understand how hard it is. And if you don't have the adequate staff or the adequate support, I can understand why you might neglect somebody. And if it's not somebody that is the part of your family, just be forewarned. It's not good, guys. It's very, very, very sad, the state of our country and how we care for our elderly. So anyways, she ended up back at the ER there. While she was there, they found what they thought was a brain bleed. They were doing, they did a CT. They thought they found a brain bleed. She had to be rushed down to another, the bigger hospital in Fort Wayne, which is not too far. But so she ended up there. Long story short, she didn't have a brain bleed, but we did find out that she had a broken back. She had a lot of bone spring in her neck, which to this day I think was probably putting pressure on her spinal cord. That's why she was losing. They were putting her in a Hoyer lift to move her because they couldn't get her up out of the bed. She couldn't stand at the nursing home, and I think the Hoyer probably put more pressure. And I think that's maybe why the loss of her. And a Hoyer is like a little contraption that they put you in and move you. I learned lots of stuff through this whole process. But anyways, she had bone spring. I think there was spinal cord compression, even though we were still not sure about that. She had all kinds of issues with her potassium. And, obviously her thyroid was still off the charts crazy. But just a lot of little things that ended up being all a big thing, if that makes sense. So, her condition would kind of improve, and then her blood pressure started dropping. And I think, honestly, she was dying right then, but they put her on blood pressure meds to keep her pressures up. And then the blood pressure meds supported her pressures enough to keep her body kind of going. And then she was bedridden and not really moving. So then they ended up, they got her to a point there, and I don't even remember how many days she was in that hospital. Now I can't even tell you, but they got her to a point there where then she could go to rehab. And so then we're looking at another rehab facility. We went to the best rehab facility in the area, and honestly, it was the best care that she had. But I knew her body was done. I could just see it. I was feeding her baby food at the hospitals. They couldn't support what she needed diet-wise. I was going and buying baby food. I had to be there for all 3 meals to make sure she ate it because there was nobody there to feed her. And I knew that was going to be an issue at rehab too. I know that they say that they will help them, but if somebody needs that kind of care, what I found out is it doesn't really happen. And so anyway, she only made it a week at that rehab facility, and she just declined very rapidly because it was a lot. It was, 4 hours of rehab a day, and her body was just already just gone, really. It was just so weak. And so they gave her some options. She could be readmitted to the hospital and put on IV thyroid medication, which they probably honestly should have done in the beginning, but that wasn't an option that was given to her. And it could be, who knows how long. And she wanted out of the hospital, and we had gotten the house to where she could go home. And they said, because she was losing more weight and she was becoming more fatigued and more weak, that hospice was probably the other option. And I let her decide that, and she was able to, and I'm thankful for that. So that's what was chosen. And so that would have been the beginning of May. So we went a month with all the hospitalizations and rehab. And then we were to the beginning of May, and we brought her home. And I wasn't sure that I could do it because the decision was made that I would be the one caring for her. And I knew that meant I would be away from my family. I had already been away from my family for a month. My husband was there when he could be. I was swapping out children. It ended up being we had to make some decisions on who was going to stay with me. She was a 2-person transfer, which meant we knew we wouldn't be taking her to the bathroom or anything like that because she couldn't get out of bed. And we knew at that point she went home with the catheter, and we knew she was fully incontinent. But I needed someone else to help me roll her and things in bed. I've never been a nurse, not trained as a nurse. But here I was faced with this decision to do this. And I really didn't have a decision, guys, because although I struggled with the relationship with my mom when I was younger, I was pretty committed to caring for her. And I knew that there was no one else that could do it or would do it. And so I was it. So I didn't really feel like I had a decision, really. I guess I could have said no, and I could have, found a facility, and I could have put her in that facility. But I wouldn't have been able to come home and sleep at night after what we'd went through the first time around. I couldn't. And I don't, for any of you out there who have loved ones in facilities, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. But I myself, if I knew that that was an option, I knew I had to take it. If I could do it. And I just saw it as I had 8 children. I have eight children. I was able to care for all of them. And I knew at this point my mom was really no different than me having another child to care for. And I just knew I had to do that. So they tell you hospice is very supportive, and they are. We had a fabulous nurse. I love her to death. Her name was Brooke. I won't say her last name because I don't know if she would allow me to or want me to, but she was very good, very supportive. I felt like she was family by the end of it. But it was still me caring for her. They don't come at 3 o'clock in the middle, or 3 o'clock in the morning. They're not there. They're there, in the beginning, just a couple times a week, maybe once a week for bathing, 2 times a week, however much she wanted. But it was really on me. And we chose not my oldest son, but the next down, my son Logan and he helped me. And it was the next, there was one little reprieve in there that Logan had because he had a piano recital and I really wanted him to perform. So he went back home, and then my daughter Shelby came and helped for about 3 weeks. But for the most part, it was Logan and I caring for my mom at her house while she was dying. And it was hard and torturous at times, and other times it was happy and joyful because it was there were moments with my mom that were very sweet. And she got to, each weekend my husband would come, which is not easy. It was very difficult, but he would come and bring some of the other kids, or they would swap out, so she got to see everybody. And Allison, my oldest that lives at home, stayed and took care of the kids here, kind of, finished out some of the things that I didn't get to do for school with them. And if I didn't have her, I don't know how we would have done it, because so the large family did help me tremendously. It was a blessing that I had all of them. We wouldn't have been able to do it without all of that. But I don't, and I'm not someone who has regret. So I know a lot of people have asked me, my husband included, how do you feel? Do you wish that you would have, done something sooner? Of course, having her in that mess and knowing that she was living like that, it's tough. But I am very much a Christian person. So I knew that, God would guide me. He would lead me. And I think that he did. And he took care of us through the whole journey. Now, I don't know, if you are not a person of faith, I don't know how you would get through something like this, because I knew, dealing with my mom dying too, I had been around other family members' deaths, my father included. I was there when he passed. I was there when Darren's father passed. Death was not a stranger to me, so I had walked those tough things before, but not in the way that I had to care for a dying person. It was always somebody else, and I was there, right? So I guess it was tough, those ending days. I knew it was getting closer. I'm going to be really transparent though, as it drew on, and everybody's saying it's going to be soon. They even thought our nurse went to where, I believe it was probably about 3.5 weeks before my mom passed. They thought that maybe she would be passing soon because of some of her symptoms. So they went to the daily, like where the nurse comes daily, and then she rallied. And because she was bedridden, everything was slow. So it took a while for her body to finally shut down. And since she was so stubborn, I think that, she just wasn't ready, honestly. Because even in the beginning, I'll tell you, my mom knew she was dying. There was no question. We were very, very open about the whole situation. She would even tell people when they called, she got to talk to some of her relatives. I would hold the phone for her, and the first thing she'd say is, I'm on my deathbed. So she knew. And she was very much a Christian person. So she had faith in knowing on where she was going when that moment would happen, when she would pass. But I started to get bitter towards the end. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to go home. And to tell you, there was a moment, there were lots of moments where it was really, really hard. And my son was there to witness it. But like our youngest son, Darren and I's youngest son, Edison, he learned how to ride a bike while I was gone. And of course they took video, and he wanted me to see it. And my husband sent it to me. And it was so hard, guys. Like, I just broke down bawling. I didn't know. I didn't let Edison know that, but it just hurt so bad. I mean, I wasn't there. And it was hard. So it's like this whole battle, this caregiver battle. But it's a blessing, though, to be able to give that to someone. My mom, she lived in this bad place, and horrible. And she even said that first night, or maybe the second night she was in the hospital, she said, Cheri, I had a dream that I woke up, my house was all clean. And I said, Mom, I'm going to make that happen for you. And I was able to do that and get her back home. And she was able to pass at home. So she passed away on July the 12th. Her service, her memorial service was actually last Saturday. I was going to do this podcast prior to now, but I wanted to wait until that was kind of all past. It was just a really crazy journey. And it felt like forever. I missed a whole season. I came home to like summer, and when I left, I took my winter coat, guys. I had my winter boots with me when I was first there because we had snow in April. And so it was just a crazy, crazy thing. I will tell you, though, if you ever have the opportunity to be able to do that for someone that you love, regardless of your relationship, do it. Do it for them, because they deserve it if you can. And the thing is, it's really easy to, I could have said, I was getting ready to like start a pod. And if you don't know what that is, it was a plant. I know this sounds kind of trivial and all of that, but I was getting ready to do all these things. I was going to start a pod here in West Michigan, support group for those that want to transition to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. I was working on some other things where I was moderating, and but really leaving my family, I had to leave them. And, but it's worth the sacrifice. It's a short time. In the end, while I was in it, it felt really long. But, in the grand scheme of things, it's just a short time. And I was able to give her something that really no one else could. And I think for her, and I would like to go into detail because there's so much more that I can share. But I would be on here for like a whole nother, easily another hour or more, because I want to share about the dying process too, but I don't want to do that right here, right now, because that might be more than what all of you want to hear. But I will tell you, if any of you are facing any of this, walking any of this journey, and you need an ear, I am here. You can email me or message me or whatever. I just know I was blessed with some really cool things, though, through the process. One, I didn't give up on eating whole food plant-based. Even when it would have been easy to just, have food. I could have had like any of the food delivery services, because here I can't do that. There I could have made all those choices to do all those things and not treated myself well. Because emotionally there were some really hard days, and my worst, I don't want to say cheat things, because whole food plant-based eating for me is a lifestyle, but I would get trail mix, has oil in it. I think it's on the I don't know if it's on the raisins or what, but it was raisins and banana chips and cashews and peanuts kind of trail mix. And there was another one too from Aldi. And that was my emotional eating. I would eat some of that, and my weight would go up a couple pounds here. But I'll tell you, my body is in such a good place that I would just stop eating it, and I would drop the weight. And I was still walking down there, guys. Logan would watch my mom, and I would go on walks. And I think if you follow me on Instagram, I did a walk. Well, you won't see it now because it was in my stories, I think, with Allison this last weekend, or maybe last week when I was down there in Indiana. And I still did. I needed to move my body. I needed to feel good because I had to take care of her. And, praise Jesus, I didn't get sick the whole time I was there. And I know that in all my knowers, that if I would have been in the shape that I was in prior to going whole food plant-based, 240 plus pounds and diabetic and, high cholesterol, feeling like shit, I could have never cared for my mom. I could have never done that. Not physically could I have done it, nor emotionally. And whole food plant-based eating gave me that. It gave me the ability to care for my body in a way so that I could care for her. So just know that how you treat just know that how you're treating yourself isn't just for you. Tomorrow it could be your day to make that same decision, and maybe it's not for your parents, maybe it's for one of your kids. Health is so important, and it's fleeting, but we can take charge of our own health. And I know that. I've proved it. I've done it. And you don't always have to depend on others. You can make the choice for you. And so I wanted to get you caught up to where I was. And I want you, for any of you listening to this, this isn't, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I did enough of that for all of us. When I was there, I did feel sorry for myself. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't like this, I'm going to manifest all these good feelings and all the things and be happy every day. I did try to find joy in my days. Some days it was very, very, very hard, but I got through it. Just like in the beginning when I wanted to get healthy and I was walking and my feet hurt so fucking bad that I didn't know how I was going to make the next step. I just did it. And that's how improving your health is. It's just one step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one meal at a time, guys. So anyways, I'm going to stop there. I could go on and on. I know there were some other things that I would have liked to have said, and maybe I will share this later. I'm going to be really transparent. I don't know where the podcast is going to go. I have a feeling I will continue, but I'm in prayer about that, about what my next steps are. I'm very much in the beginnings and in the depths of the grieving process. I'd like to think, I'm good. I'm going to go, move forward. And I've kind of talked to everybody like that's the case. I'm going to the next chapter. Now I can finally move forward. But then I have days like today. Today was a really hard day for me. And it's, I know I'm battling a bit of depression with all the things. I'm going to be 50, not this year, but next year. And I'm having like all the things are going through my head. Like after losing my mom, like where do I want to be, and what do I want to be doing, and how do I like want to show up in the world for my kids, for my family, for my husband, and for all of you. And so I'm kind of still making those decisions. And if you're listening to this and it's something you would like for me to continue, please reach out. I'd like to hear from you and know if it's helpful or not. I hope that it is. If you stumble on this, I'm not going to take any of this stuff down. If you stumble on this, months and months from now, and you're dealing with any of these things, just know you're not alone. Lots of people have walked down the road you're facing, whether it be health or death, dealing with death and loss. So anyway, I hope this was good. I hope you got something from it. I appreciate you listening. And remember, I'll leave you with this. Remember, don't be screwed by food. Eat whole food, plant-based. Get out there, move your body, eat some plants. Have a blessed one.